Hey guys, welcome to HipHughes History. We're hitting you up with the last of the Reconstruction Amendment, and that would be the 13th, 14th, the 15th Amendment, giving African-American males the right to vote. Let's look at the words of the amendment, the lead up to the amendment, but more importantly, look at the failure of the amendment, the effect of the amendment, and we're about to grow your brain, so giddy up to learning.
And first there were the words.
Section 1. The right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
All right, before we talk about the 15th Amendment, we want to put it into context, and I think the years are important. This will help you a little bit. Of course, we know that the Civil War ended in 1865, and we also get the 13th Amendment in 1865. This is like Lincoln's last hurrah before he's assassinated, and that amendment gets ratified. But by abolishing slavery, and this is really due to the failure of the Emancipation Proclamation, really to live after the Civil War, Northern Republicans are especially worried about representation in Congress. You have to go to the House. Go to the House! And the House is based on population. You have to remember that these southern states were represented in those congressional districts before the Civil War with a 3/5 slave population. Now that 3/5 is going to be full representation, which means they're going to get more House seats. And that means that if they can control kind of how, people vote and who votes and all that stuff, they're really going to expound their numbers. They're going to grow as a force. The Democrats are going to take over. In 1866, we get the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And this is an attempt by the radical Republicans really to start to enfranchise African Americans who are facing automatically black codes, which are stripping them of any rights, which are denying them equal access, which are really doing kind of a neo-slavery job of them. So in 1866, they passed the Civil Rights Act, which is very flowery in its language about the federal government is going to protect the rights of these new African American freed, peoples. And what do we get? We get an Andrew Johnson veto. So, learning alert. The first
Override of a
veto in American history comes when those radical Republicans in Congress were like, hey, Johnson, we call you, and we override your veto, and it became law. But it's still going to be a problem because the courts are going to interpret it in a way where it's really not enforceable, and really Congress isn't going to have the teeth to really, do what they need to do. And there's also this problem of Republicans also having some discrimination in their minds. I mean, we have nativism on the East Coast. We have nativism with the Chinese, stuff going on in the railroads out west. So really, there's no really rush to enforce the spirit of the Civil Rights Acts of 1866. So what do we get? We get the radical Republicans saying that we have to get this into the Constitution. And this is a really quick history. I'm probably talking too much about it, but that results in the 14th Amendment, which becomes a precondition for those southern states coming back into the Union. We're going to make these African Americans citizens. So now that they're citizens, there's this real rush that we need to allow them to vote because the representation is changing. So that's where we are. We're in 1868, right around there, and radical Republicans are seeing these new southern states coming back into the Union, and they're thinking our days are numbered. So the amendment, the 15th Amendment, is really born in the beginning of 1869 by a very nervous Nelly Republican-controlled House. They're worried that, they're lame ducks, they have no power, and the Democrats are coming. So before the Democrats can get there, let's give African Americans the right to vote, so those African Americans in the South are going to be Republican voters, and maybe we can hold on to our majority. I think really that's the spirit, rather than this kind of, flowery equality language. It's really pragmatically a way to keep themselves in power, but of course it's still the right thing to do. So we get that proposal in 1869, and it's very controversial. It's controversial not only in the South, but in the North. There's only 8 northern states that allowed African Americans to vote in their states. So we're asking the North to change along with the South. And we already talked about nativism that's rampant on the East Coast and the West Coast. And another source of contention is with women's groups. You have really a split in the suffrage movement. The National Women's Suffrage Association, this is with Susan B. Anthony, who's opposed to the amendment because they want in. And then you have the American Women's Suffrage Association. This is Lucy Stone, and these are the people that are supporting the amendment. So it's really splitting other groups. But at the end of the day, they're going to squeak this thing through. It was really a close call, both in the House and in the Senate. It's a party vote. It's Republicans favoring it because it's expanding their base, and it's Democrats that are opposing it for a variety of reasons. So there we go. We get that in 1870, right before the Democrats are going to be coming back and controlling soon the House. We get this amendment thrown into the ratification process, and we all know that you need 3/4 of the states, and one of the issues is going to be, at least from a Southern perspective, that these are legislatures that are being controlled by radical Republicans and by, a union-dominated South. These really aren't representations of Southern viewpoints, that in a sense they're being strong-armed into accepting this amendment. But yada yada yada, bada bada boom, we get the 15th Amendment right around June. Now, I don't know about the month, it just rhymed, but in 1870, we definitely get the 15th Amendment, and now we're definitely going to take a minute to look at the effects of the 15th Amendment, or maybe the failure of the 15th Amendment. Call back.
Just step aside or you might end up in a heap.
So here's a little bit of irony for you folks out there. In 1876, we have African Americans that are voting in the South. They're voting mainly because they're union occupied, and now we have the 15th Amendment, and they're voting for a guy by the name of Rutherford B. Hayes, who's a Republican. And of course, he's running against the Democrat Samuel Tilden, who was from New York. Yeah, whatever. But at the end of that, scenario, what occurs is that Tilden probably wins. He wins the popular vote, and he probably wins the electoral vote, but through this kind of backdoor dealing, this compromise occurs where Rutherford B. Hayes takes the presidency and removes those Union troops. And now the irony is that it's those African Americans that got him elected, and now he's turning his back on those African Americans who are going to be stripped of those rights of vote by state enacted laws. These are now Jim Crow laws. So we have literacy tests. We have poll taxes you have to pay. You have to read under the literacy test. And you have grandfather clauses, which say to white voters that if your grandfather voted, you don't have to read or you don't have to pay. Huh? What up with that? And what up with that is that the Supreme Court, which is the final arbitrator in what this 15th Amendment means, is basically going to say this doesn't so much give African Americans the right to vote, it just really restricts the southern states from denying them the right to vote. So if you have race-neutral laws like poll taxes, asking people to pay $5 for bureaucratic paperwork, or that you need to read because we think that you have to have a certain level of an IQ or something like that in order to vote, that's up to the southern states. That doesn't mean they're doing it because they're black. Yeah, so that's really going to be the rule. And through intimidation, of course, the Ku Klux Klan, democratic, power in the South, racist power, blacks aren't going to be able to exercise that right to vote. Yet those southern states are going to get more representation because they have these African American citizens in the state. So that's hashtag irony. So fast forward to, 1965, where we get the Voting Rights Act, and now the federal government's finally going to get some teeth to really supervise these elections in these racist areas of the country. And everybody lived happily ever after. Maybe, maybe not. So that's the 15th Amendment, guys. We hope that you learned it. Remember, it's 15. To remember those 3 amendments, you can watch the other amendment videos. I think that's really important to get those down. But now, you ain't a clown, and it's like I'm a rapper today, or something like that. So giddy up for that, guys. Thanks for watching. You know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say where attention goes, energy flows, and we'll see you next time that you press my buttons. You better be subscribed. A couple quick shout-outs, guys. HipHughes history went down like a clown about a month, 2 months ago. Somebody's daughter, we're not going to name who it is or who the daughter is, might have been spilling a little bit of juice on someone's computer and it might have died, and yada yada yada. We raised enough money to buy another one, and I wanted to give a couple shout outs. Corey Wilkerson, Elizabeth Sofley, Facebook friends. You guys are really cool people, really cool parents, and I know that you use HipHughes history in kind of a homeschooling activity. So I wanted to thank you for chipping into the pot, and I wanted to thank Paul Anderson. Do you know this guy? Bozeman Biology, my YouTube EDU guru brother from another mother. You chipped into the pot, and I definitely want to direct people to your website because your YouTube is just hashtag awesome. And Alexis Danis, another YouTube EDU guru, a great friend who has a channel, Bite Sized. You should go check her science videos out. It'll blow your brain inside and out. You chipped into the pot, so I wanted to thank you as well. So I think that's 3 thank yous. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for pressing my buttons. We'll see you next time you do it again.